Alright guys, so we are doing another manipulation today. I'm doing these less as tutorials and more as a go along with me kind of thing. I'm going to try to break down some steps on how to do specific things in tutorials later on. Right now, it's just going to be sharing how I do manipulations as I do them. For this one, I'm working on my character, Finea. She's a character that I adopted recently. She's still a baby puppy, but I want to go ahead and create an adult image for her. She will more or less look like this over here, which is the design of her mother and uncle. They're twins, and she overall got their design, but it's also not exactly that design. I will open her profile and just kind of show you what she looks like. Let me just make that image bigger by dragging it up here. So this is the image that she currently has. So you can see that it's very similar to Mom and Uncle, but a little more brown and slightly different, I guess you could say, pips, or not pips. What am I looking for? Tan marking shape? I don't know what I'm trying to say there. The shape of her brown markings is slightly different. She also has the gold eyes as opposed to the uh, color of her mother's eyes that came from, I'm sorry, her father's eyes. Her mother had gold eyes. Her father had these heterochromic eyes, silver brown right here. So we're going to have some fun creating her. Now that you've been introduced to Finny, we're going to go ahead and get started. Now I've chosen this image for her because I like the idea that she has some dark under her eyes. Now, of course, on this puppy image, this actually isn't a marking under her eye. Let me make my brush smaller. This is actually not a marking, but it's part of the skin that goes under and around a wolf's eyes. And I chose this reference image because it also has thick, dark skin under the eye. Now, this wolf isn't black, but that's okay. We're going to go ahead and make her darker. We're going to make her look like a black wolf with tan markings. Now, the first thing we're going to do is, well, we're not going to change the background any. We're going to use the same background with this wolf. I like it if it's in, she's in nature. But we are going to go ahead and first, on our background layer, our original image layer, we're going to duplicate that. Because if we make any mistakes editing this main image, we want to be able to go back and re-get that image without having to leave Photoshop. So on the layer that we just duplicated, we'll name that source, because that's going to be our source image. And I'm going to do auto tone. I always do auto tone, auto contrast, and auto color to see if it changes anything. Now auto color made it slightly more blue, so I'm going to undo that. I don't want her to be more blue. She's going to be a warmer design. The next thing I want to do is come in with my curves. Now you saw this in the last video if you were able to watch it. Curves help you with your contrast and your lighting a little bit. It will help your colors and your shadows and everything pop out a little bit more. Now I am trying to make her character darker. So what I'm going for here, and it is working a little bit, we're going to bring this down a little bit more so you can maybe see what it does. Now, if I take the preview off, this is the original image, and when I show the preview again, you can see it darkens her coat, but it keeps the lighter areas, such as this white on her face, barely even changes. It kind of stays the same. And that's what I'm going for here, because this is going to help me darken her coat overall in the end. Now, I'm going to quickly take a look in here at Vibrance. I don't know where Vibrance would be on one of your other programs, such as GIMP or Pixlr, but I know that you can also change saturation. The difference that I'll show you here with saturation and vibrance is saturation really cranks it up. It makes it highly saturated. There's a lot of color, especially in her brown portions. So we're going to turn that back down to, got my cord for my tablet in the way. We'll put this back down to 0. Now, if you turn your vibrance up, you'll notice it's a lot more subtle, and it doesn't only affect the browns. This one also affects the greens in the background and the grays. Like, it just makes the image more vibrant, but it still looks realistic. If you turn them both up, then you've got this crazy, way oversaturated image. I'm going to turn them both up a little bit because I want her to look like she's in a vibrant environment. I like it. And we're going to be replacing her overall colors anyway, so it doesn't matter whether or not it really ups her saturation. Alright, on our next step we're going to use the new layer we've created, and we're going to call this one our primary color layer. Now our primary color layer is where we start with, say we're going to eyedrop one of these browns over here from Finny, just any brown, and we're going to start coloring that in. Now this is where you can speed it up if you want to. We're just going to use a soft brush. I'm going to go with a soft round 27 brush, 100%, so try and crank that all the way up. And we're just going to start coloring it in just like this. We're going to work it up around the edges as close as possible. Now remember, we'll come back through and smudge over any extra hairs that stick over it, so don't bother about making sure you cover up all the edges on the outside. We'll fix those later. So I'm going to take time to fill this in. I'll leave the video in real time so that you can hear my commentary if you want to. Otherwise, you can go ahead and skip through this if you already know, this step and how this works. I'm just going to take my time right here. There's absolutely no need for you to watch me do this if you've already done it. It's a work with me type of video. Open your own image, your own program, and do your own as we go. Maybe it's a similar design. Maybe you've found this stock image and you want to replicate what I'm doing just to see if you're able to. Go ahead. There's no problem with that. And I'll actually have some of my tutorial videos where I'll give you the link to the stock image and a link to what I want you to make it look like, and we'll have fun doing it together, seeing if we can get what we desire. I'm also at some point going to do a video on how to do dark fur into lighter fur, light fur into darker fur, adding color to fur, adding color to, say, a wolf that is very dark, because it's really, really hard to take a dark-based wolf and add color to it, but it is possible so long as some of the wolf's original texture is there. Alright, so we're just gonna keep going up in here, nice and smooth. This takes a little while. It takes a couple minutes, but it's worth it to make sure you get all your little spots, to make sure there's no gaps. Like if I do this, you can see there's very faintly, well, I'm not sure if you can see it, but there are very faintly gaps right here. We're gonna come around over here. Bring ourselves up carefully. Take your time. You don't have to rush. I go kind of quickly, but you don't have to. If it takes you a little longer than it takes me, that's okay. Now you've got your basic outline here. We'll come in now with our smudge tool. We're going to make it size 3. And we'll just gently smudge. I'm going to turn my strength up to 60 and see if that helps a little bit. Yeah, it does. Okay. And then we just gently smudge it out so that it covers these hairs that stick out. Take your time. Do one stroke at a time, pulling it out. You do not have to rush. The firmer you press, if you're using a tablet pen, the firmer it'll be. And also you can do several strokes just like that. This does not have to be perfect. Don't worry about it being perfect. Part of the image that I'm working with is that she is in the light, so this part on the edge is going to be lighter anyway, so don't stress it. That's going to be something we are challenged with in this photo. Is taking a character that very clearly has lighter fur and is in sunlight and making it a darker character but still has shinies in the sunlight. Here's the thing. A black wolf or a black dog or a black animal such as that, if they're in very bright sunlight, their fur will still shine white. They have very shiny, flaxen, soft fur. It's not flaxen. I don't know what word I was going for there. Fluffy, soft fur. So that fur, when on a healthy specimen, is going to be extremely shiny. It's going to reflect white no matter the base color of the animal. So that's something to consider when doing artwork like this is, hey, you can still have very bright whites and very light or dark darks. You're still going to have your value throughout the image. So I've done that more or less. I'm going to go ahead and add a little more around her ears because this is super fluff. Now I'm going to come in and I'm going to add with a 30% right here. Go ahead and full screen it so that you can see it better. Just kind of add a little bit more up here, and then we're going to smudge it. And remember, the smudging doesn't have to be perfect. It just, whatever you feel looks good. We're going to turn it back up to 100% so that I can get that fine edge there. The lighter you press, the harder your edge is. take our time to add some fuzzies here and get these down here. And that pretty much covers the outline of our wolf. Now we can set this to multiply. Now, it's very obvious that multiply makes this a lot darker than maybe we had intended. That's okay. We're going to work with it. We're going to try some other layer options too. I'm going to try overlay. Overlay doesn't do a whole lot. Soft light isn't going to do a whole lot. We can try darken. Darken sometimes does some fun stuff. That doesn't do a whole lot. Hue makes her a little more brown. That's actually very pretty, say for a character design, but that's not what we're going for. Color obviously makes her tan. Luminosity goes with how bright the color I'm using is, which doesn't help a whole lot. We can try hard light, vivid light, linear light, pin light. See, all of these do different things. But what we're going to work with, there's lighten and screen. A lot of these can be used, but we're not going to use most of these. You can try color burn or linear burn. These also make things darker. Here, let's see. But no, we're going to work with multiply. Multiply is the one I use the most. Now we're going to control click on our layer and paste that over top of our source. And this is, okay, it didn't copy it. Let's try that again. Make sure I've got this layer selected. It's not doing it now. Okay. There we go. Okay. So if we hide this, we've got her by herself, which is good. We're going to use this now. This is going to be our cutout. Now the cutout is used for many things. Primarily, it's what we can grab from really quickly to get the shape of the wolf. It's also going to be what we can do clipping masks from. So we don't primarily edit the cutout itself. The cutout just keeps everything to the shape of the wolf we want, because this layer style will never change. So we take the primary color, which we've set to multiply, create a clipping mask. Now if I come back in with my brush and I draw out here on the edges, you're not going to see it. But what it does do is okay, so you're not going to see it if I draw out here past the edges, but it will thicken my edges here along where I drew in the fur and kind of make her look like she has less of that white fuzzy outline from the original image. She looks more her. Okay. So let's do another layer just so that I can give you a better example. Create clipping mask. If I put black and white and I take my white, this is just showing you how this works, I can draw all the way across. And even though I am pressing down and drawing here, you don't see it because it is clipped so that it cannot go outside the boundaries of our cutout layer. Okay, so we're going to go back. So our next option is we're going to duplicate our cutout layer, move it on top, and then I'm going to reset these 3 layers to go back to being clipping masks. Now our cutout layer, I'm going to go image, adjustments, brightness, contrast, and I'm going to turn the brightness up a little bit and turn our contrast down a couple times because it might take a couple times to get exactly what I'm going for. I'm going to leave brightness where it is, turn it up, turn it down, turn it up, just play with it. What I'm going for is making the image below darker, but I'm going to try to get these highlights to pop again. Okay, and then I'm going to go back into hue and saturation and turn the saturation. Wow, look at the difference there. Turn the saturation all the way down. Now we lose detail here, down here, which means we've changed our contrast a little too much. So we're going to undo that twice. So we'll go back to this image and we'll come in and first we're going to change our saturation down. Notice we by default lose some of our saturation down there, and that's okay. That's not something we can help, so we'll go ahead and do the brightness and contrast again. Brightness up a little bit, contrast all the way down, image adjustments, brightness, contrast all the way down, click OK. From here, we're going to click on, we're going to try a few of these. One, we're going to try overlay, see what overlay does. Now overlay will bring out your shadows and your highlights, but it doesn't quite look like what I want it to. It's not really separating these light bits right here where I know some of the whiter fur or lighter fur it pops out. Soft light is not very exciting in this case. Hard light, man, it really makes it pop, but it desaturates it too much. Vivid light, same thing. Linear light gets it really harsh and really pretty. There's also pen light. Pen light is one that I like to use just because it does some interesting pigment stuff and it really makes your brights pop. So let's turn the pen light, that's this one here, down to right about here. And you'll see it's starting to work. Now we're going to duplicate that layer. Going to come in with our eraser at about 60, no, we'll do 100. We'll go ahead at 100% opacity, and I'm going to erase some of these highlights, not all of them. Just the edges of them for the most part. So that the outline here, see? Okay, and then something else I want to do because it seems like we've lost some of our coloration. Because I want to come down to, I want to control click our cutout copy here, cutout copy number 1. I'm going to copy our original background, I'm going to paste it here, and I'm going to make it our pen light instead and see if it adds more color. So let's do pen light, okay, and we had it at 36%. So you'll see it didn't really add any color to our highlights. Let's go ahead and play with our vibrance and our saturation. Undo preview with preview, undo preview with preview. Okay, so that added a little bit. Now the issue that we are facing at this point is that we still don't have much brightness to these details of the fur. So we're actually gonna slow down a second. We're gonna do our lasso selection tool, this one. Make sure that our feather is at 2 to 5. I'm gonna do 5, and I'm gonna select this like this. It does not have to be precise. I'm gonna select this part of the muzzle, and I'm gonna select through here. Because these areas and this area, I'm still not getting enough of those highlights reflecting on the dark coat. So I'm going to select those. I'm going to come down to the original background again. I'm going to copy, Control C, click up here, paste. We're going to make this a clipping mask so it blends in. Okay, and what we're going to do for this one is we're going to turn our brightness and our contrast. Brightness down a little bit, contrast up. Now, turning the contrast up separates the dark and the light a little bit more. So we're going to do that one more time. So you can see, yeah, it really makes a difference there. Okay, turn it up a little bit more, and we're going to sharpen it. Sharpening it really makes those colors pop. Now, we're going to do linear light. Linear light is a bit too much. We're going to do vivid light. Vivid light is a bit too much, and we're going to try pen light. Pen light is, again, a little closer to what we want, except for these dark areas are a little too much. So we're going to come in with our eraser at 30%. And we're just going to slowly and carefully erase some of our edges. And then we're going to play with our opacity again. So we're going to turn it all the way down and then turn it up a little bit. So now we are getting a little bit closer. The only other thing I want to do for this is to paste this in here. This one is hard because you've lost so much color here. It's almost solid white. So we're going to come in with our brightness and contrast and turn our brightness down a little bit. You'll notice that gives it some of its texture back. We're going to turn our contrast. We'll leave our contrast pretty much the same. And then we're going to try hard light. There you go. Okay, so hard light makes this very bright. It gives you back your contrast. We just need to line it up to where it should be, which takes a couple tries here. I think we got it now. Okay, it needs to go right there, I think. Okay. It's still a little too bright. We're going to deal with that. We're first going to do a clipping mask. Turn it down a bit. And then I'm going to erase just the bottom half of it. Oh, that's not even where I'm supposed to be erasing. Just be here. Just the bottom half of it and just the bottom half of this. Okay. Our next step, we're going to go above all of this. We're going to create a new layer. We're going to grab this lighter gray up here. We don't want to grab too dark of a color because it's going to make it happen too fast. And from there, we're going to start filling in our colors. We're going to make sure we're on a clipping mask so that we can go kind of crazy around the edges and it won't affect anything. Don't worry about if you color over the eyes right now, that's fine. Just start filling in where her blacks are. And now again, I'm going to come in just like I did with my other image the other day with my eraser on, say, 30%, and I will soften these edges where I come in because that helps make it look more natural in the end. Now the insides of her ears are still brown, so we don't want to color inside her ears for this one, other than about this much, which I will then erase about like that, and then we'll come back through. We'll actually go ahead and leave it colored in until I'm ready to tackle it. The fluff on her ears will be black. Now notice that I'm saying it's black even though I'm coloring it in with the gray. It's because I haven't actually changed anything with the gray right now. It's going to look more black like she does. Now, on her chest here, she actually has some color that comes down just like this wolf does. So we're going to take advantage of that. But similar to her father or her father and her aunt, we're going to fade out that color a little bit, just on the edges, so that it blends to the rest of her coat. Now, it's going to be the same back here. We'll make our brush a little bigger. It blends a lot over her hips and back here, like so. You'll notice we blend it out nice and smooth. We may have to do another layer like this to get it as dark as we want it to, but right now it's about getting it nice and smooth. We'll come back over here and we will look at the other layer just to see how we're doing. Now on our child here, you'll notice the brown actually comes up under her eyes. On her father, it only comes up to the bottom of his cheek, so that's one of our differences here. So we actually notice here that the backs of the ears are not black. So we can erase a little bit into the head to make that blend better. Now, first thing we'll do is set this to multiply. Looky there, that brought out some of our colors. We'll bring this under our lighter layers because we still want these highlights to pop. Notice that they're still very gray and washed out. So what we can do is we can turn our pen light up a little, turn it back down a little, and we can just play with that as needed. Okay, for now we'll put it back to where it was, and we'll continue working. Let's find our multiply layer. Here we go. So there's a start. We're going to try bringing this multiply layer up above everything else. Notice how it changes the overall appearance of things. So we're going to move things around. Okay. We're getting somewhere. We're going to duplicate our multiply layer here. That helps bring in some of her darker colors from up here. But you notice it brings up too much of it. So what we're actually doing with this layer is we're setting this layer to color. And we're going to bring it back above everything else. So it doesn't work as a multiply, but it works pretty good as a color. Create clipping mask, we get everything back into a clipping mask. So this makes things darker, this layer here. This makes it the color it's supposed to be. So we're going to come back in on this layer, our layer 5, which is our darker layer, and we're going to grab a slightly darker color from mom over here. Mom, dad, uncle, uncle. Uncle will be more correct. So we're going for a slightly darker color. We want it to be more of this color as she grows up, so we're going to grab that anyway. The first thing we're going to do is lock transparency and paste it like that to see if it changes anything. If it does not, we'll leave the transparency locked. And at 65%, we'll come in and, not 65%, brush size 65. We'll brush some color in. Now you'll notice it's extremely dark right here. That's going to be in part to our layers that we have set up. We'll have to come back and lighten that particular part. And in this case, we can come in on our primary color layer, which is on multiply, and we can erase just that part to help lighten it up. There we go. We can do the same over her back a little bit. Now we want to make sure that our color layer matches that nice gray color. And right now it's still a little too brown, so we're going to bring our saturation down. And there we go. There, see? It's a little more reminiscent of what we want. Now we're getting somewhere, but we're still a ways away. So the next thing we want to do is bring a new layer up. We want to grab this nice rich brown, and we're going to come in and start playing with her ears and her other body parts, just very slightly. There's like 100% color in the ear, 30% add some blend into the head, because colors aren't going to be very sudden. We'll go ahead and do our clipping mask while we're thinking about it. Go back to 100% and very lightly draw in the markings here. This is us specifically adding, it can be a little rough here because, once again, we're going to erase around the edges in just a moment. Okay, so the very first thing I want to do is set it to color. Now, you'll see color is extremely harsh. That is okay. It lets us see clearly where we need to adjust so that we can adjust it. We'll make a bigger brush for this back here so that it's easier to fade it out in just a few strokes. Now, you'll notice that with this one, it's much too sudden. So we're actually going to take our saturation down a little bit, and we're going to take it a little bit more brown. That looks a little bit more natural. We're getting somewhere. It's starting to look like a cohesive character. Now, choosing our cutout layer. So control click on our cutout layer, because remember, we haven't edited this, it's normal. We're going to go to our original background layer, copy and paste. We're going to do this a lot because that helps us bring out our original texture, our original shadows, all of that. And we're going to play with some layer settings here and see if we can make these colors look natural again, natural highlights, you know, the whole 9 yards. Color dodge does an interesting thing in which it specifically takes the lights, see here, and makes them lighter again. So we can play with that. We can turn it up and down. But it's not really needed, so we're going to go through these layers again. Overlay here does some really interesting stuff. It does look pretty good, but we're going to keep going. Soft light, not what we're looking for. Hard light, linear light, thin light, hard mix, difference, exclusion, subtract, divide, hue, saturation, color. Luminosity does kind of what I'm going for, which is it evens out the colors. We're not obviously leaving her this bright, but it can help us even out our shadows. So we're going to try that. We're going to try bringing it way down, and then turn it up just a very slight bit, and you'll notice now there's a little bit less contrast on the fur, especially through her darker areas. But her darker areas are still a very, very light gray. See here? So what we can do for that is duplicate that layer. That makes it dark again, and then we can play with her luminosity, just very slightly. Now she looks very much like she should as a dark character. Somewhere along the way I lost my clipping mask, so I reselect those layers, re-add that clipping mask, no big deal. Okay. The only thing left to do is that these areas are still very much gray. They don't look like they're shiny in the light. So we're going to find the layers where we chose those areas, which is this layer. We're going to choose it from our source or our cutout. I'm going to grab it from the cutout and I'm going to paste it up here. Okay. We're going to come into brightness and contrast, and we're going to turn that contrast up and our brightness down. Notice that this forces the highlights themselves to come out more. And then we're going to try luminosity. Oh, this is not lined up properly. Let me adjust the lineup first. This can be tricky to do. You've got to really play with it sometimes, but I think that's about it. No, that's very slightly off. There. That's it. Nope, needs to go down one. Okay. Try to make sure that when you copy and paste, it goes right back into the groove it should be in. Okay, so we're gonna turn that down, turn it up, right about there. Now what we've done is we've created a character that is black and brown as opposed to the original image, which the fastest way to show you the original image is to hide this and to hide this. There you go. It still looked pretty believable. Wolf. It's not going to be perfect. The hard thing is retaining your fur texture, which can sometimes it can take a lot of layers. It can take a lot of use taking the cutout and copying it and pasting it and doing things like overlay or soft light. Now I'm going to show you something interesting. If you want to brighten up an image with soft light, go ahead and set it. Go ahead and go to Adjustments, go to Hue and Saturation, and turn your saturation up. Notice how much brighter that makes it, how much darker it can make it. So we can make her look very dark and still have our highlights. And then if we erase, let's say with a 30%, we can level out some of these colors, especially here on the back. But we didn't want to make that too much darker. And now if you compare, then erasing the ears, it ended up leaving us with this, which you can see. It's interesting, it darkens it up a little bit. I don't think it looks better darker, so we'll undo everything we just did. If it will let us. If it won't let us, then it's fine. We'll just go ahead and delete this layer. That's faster. We'll paste it again because it repastes what we just did. We're going to go back into image. We're going to set it back to soft light. Oh, it didn't paste it where it's supposed to be. So we're going to delete layer. And by control clicking on our layer and then pasting, it should force it to be exactly on top of it. And it did. So we're going to go into image. Adjustments, back into hue saturation. We're going to turn our saturation down a little bit. And we're actually going to turn our lightness up a little bit. And then we're going to go back in for soft light. Now you'll notice this brings out the highlights throughout the fur a little bit more. We need it a little bit less on the face than say on the back. So I want to keep about that level on the back that we've got there, but I don't really want to keep what's on the face. So I'm going to erase what it did here, but leave what it did back here. Here, see? Look at that contrast. Look at the color pop. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and make it a clipping mask. And I'm trying to figure out if I want to do anything else with this other than her eye color. I know that her browns are not quite the tone I want because I want them to more match her and not her parents. So we're going to select this color. We're going to dump it in. And that's fine. We're also going to click select the layer, new layer, paste it. I'm going to do it twice, or fill it in twice, deselect. We're going to set this to multiply. Multiply doesn't work, so we're going to try overlay. Overlay gets us more what we want. So the fun part with colors and soft lights and overlays is even sometimes just overlaying the color makes it more brown, or it's not always about making the highlights or the shadows more apparent. Sometimes it's just making the color closer to what you want it to be. We can also change the hue of this layer, you see, to play around a little bit. And I want it to be very, very, very slightly more yellow so that it's matching the same hue as the puppy. It's lighter than the puppy, but that's okay. She's grown. Maybe she's changed a little bit. Maybe the lighting makes it look a little bit lighter because it is in this image. She's in shadow. She's a little bit overcast. It's all basically the same lighting. Now, something we're going to do that's really nice because we have this cutout here is we're going to come in. Let me hide my grid. To hide the grid in Photoshop, by the way, you hit Control H. It just hides it, gets it out of the way, so you can see what you're actually doing with your pixels. Now, on our cutout layer, which we haven't edited up until now, we are going to erase where we originally edited or erase the eyes. We're erasing the eyes, so we're showing the original eyes. And we're going to do the same with the nose, because we want those to still be, erase it gently, you don't want to erase too much, and then at 30%, nope, we're going to do 10%. I'll erase here. I want this to look as natural as possible. Yeah, see, there you go. I actually want the natural eyes to show too, so we're going to erase some of our source image. Here, here, and here. There we go. So by erasing it, we keep it natural looking. We keep her looking like she should. Up above our highest layer, we're going to make a new layer. Now this one doesn't have to be clipping mask, so I'm just going to grab that eye color right there. And we're going to go in at a soft 9 and fill that in. We're just the eye color. Don't worry about anything else just yet. We're going to set this to color. That pretty much instantly, every time, will make it their eye color. Now, we are going to, because you can just barely see it, we're going to add another layer. We're going to hit this and go back to our default Photoshop colors, and we're going to very lightly add some eye shine, which you don't see as much on the original photo, but it helps add a brightness and an intelligence to the character's gaze. I also want to do another layer, and at 30% I'm going to do a few strokes, with the brightest part being the center here, because I want to brighten her eyes up a little bit more. We're going to do first an overlay, see what that looks like. That's a little too neon. And then with a soft light didn't seem to do much, so instead we're going to set it back to this yellow, normal, and we're just going to turn up the lightness ourselves. There we go. So that lightens the bottom part of the eye. It makes our eyes look a little more vivid. It's a little bit much on this side, so we will erase it. There we go. This girl is nearly complete. I've noticed that our background is a little more vivid than she is, so what I want to do is I want to take all of our layers now from our edit, merge them down, Control A. Oh, we don't want to merge her eyes actually. Ignore the eye layers. So it's everything from this layer, all of our clipping masks, and our cutout, and merge those all together. Control A. Hold on, we messed up. Hold on. All of these. Merge these down so that they're cutout copied too. Copy that layer. Undo what I copied. Paste. Now it didn't put it where it was supposed to put it, so I have to realign her, which is easy enough. It's just a matter of figuring out. Okay, that realigns her. We're going to redo our clipping mask because we don't want to make that go away. Now this, if you hide it or show it, you're not going to notice a difference because this is our, quote, final layer. No theoretical edits need to be done past this point for her, but we are going to come in and go into adjustments, and we're going to go to vibrance, and we're going to up her vibrancy a little bit so that she matches her background a little bit more, and her brown will pop a little bit closer to this. Now with all of that done, we're going to do a very similar step. We're going to do Control-Shift-E. That merges everything. Control-A to copy it. Undo it, because you remember you want to keep all your layers, and we're going to paste this at the very tippy top. Now this is the one we'll do further edits on. So we'll do auto tone just to see if it changes anything, auto contrast, because once you edit it, sometimes doing this will change it. I actually like what auto color did there. It brought her grays, I'll undo it so you can see it. It brought her grays to look more gray, and it kind of made her background a little cooler. So it brings all of our colors together. The next thing I want to do is go into adjustments curves and just see what happens if I play with this a little bit. Now, we're not really getting anything better in there, so we'll leave that be. We'll go directly into sharpen. Sharpening it doesn't do anything. So now it's time to go into topaz. Now, clean obviously is a little bit strong for here. So we're going to bring it down a little bit. We don't want to wash out her coat too much. And we're going to do accents 2 on this one. And we're going to turn our radius up, our sharpness up. And we'll just play with it until we get what we want. Now with this character, unlike the other day, we do not have to further edit the eyes because we had no finer details in the eyes. They are still a nice yellow color. We can always just pull her down under where we did the eye colors to get that vibrancy back, otherwise it looks good. Now, there is the other step that you could take here that everyone tends to do with this style of manipulation, and that's to take a size 1 brush in white at 100% opacity and just add on the outside a little edge to this area. This just adds more definition to the shapes here, very, very lightly on the nose, because I don't want the nose to look too detailed. And then here on the lips, it helps bring definition to this area. It's not required. It looks good without it. But it does look good with it as well. Actually, I prefer it without it. You can do it if you want. Don't do it if you don't want. It's entirely up to you. I prefer, I think, with this one, her not having that. Now, something I want to try, now that we have our full image, is what if she had the duller background? Just theoretically. To test this, we select our cutout, we select inverse, so grab our select, right click, hold on, we can do this. Select invert, we're going to copy our original background, so that we've selected invert, so we're selecting the background itself, we're selecting it from the background layer, we're going to paste it on top of the one we just did. This is our overall final. This was with the original background, and you'll see how much of a difference that makes. I do think the greens now are a little bit too bright. They are pulling away from her. So what we can do is we can take the one we just pasted, which was a lot less saturated, and we'll just bring it up and lower its opacity to right about there. And that brings them together. Once I'm satisfied with that, merge it down. She's done. That's it. She is ready to be used on site. That's all there is to it. You'll notice that each of these manipulations takes me about 40 minutes. That's just how long it usually takes me. Anywhere from a half an hour to an hour, depending on how complex the character is. This is one of the easier ones. In the future, we'll look at some of the more complex ones. We'll look at some that are even simpler than this. And we'll look at some that maybe require more editing of darks to lights or lights to darks. But this is pretty much it. She's done. She's ready to go. There are other ways to do this. This is just how I would happen to do this character. Thanks for joining me. See you next time.